And welcome to this week's edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns. We get together in person today to talk about the Cardinals. That's always a treat, so welcome.
Always a nice day.
The sun's out. There's blue sky in the air. The sun came up today. Of course, Cardinals won 3 in a row, so that's a good thing. So I want to thank all of our presenting sponsors here for the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast, as well as all of our other features here on stlsportspage.com. Archwell Health is our main podcast sponsor, and Drury Hotel is the title sponsor of everything we do here at STL Sports Page. So I encourage you to check out their websites. You can get the links on our website if any of your health needs, any of your parents' health needs, any of your future trips that you need to book a hotel for. I encourage you to check out all of that. And, of course, you can always find all of your travel information, AAA Travel of Missouri as well. So no paywalls here behind any of our content. You can get everything you want right there on the site. And thanks to Mike's efforts, you can have a lot more places to pick up the podcast as well.
You can pick it up almost everywhere that you listen to your podcast now, on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Amazon Music. We try to put it everywhere for everybody to make it easy.
And we appreciate all the comments. I do want to get to a question that we had somebody ask in, and I forgot to mention last week, so we're going to get to that later on in the show. So if you have a question or anything about anything we talk about here on the show, you can email us at reigns@stlsportspage.com and get you that information. We'll try to answer it as we can. I have to give Mike a prop because you've held out hope longer than most people that the Cardinals were going to be able to make a late playoff run. The fact that they were way behind in the wild card race, you still said, Maybe. Are you ready to say maybe not?
Well, this team's playing well, right? They're doing what they're supposed to do. And I think what's frustrating is when you look at this team, though, this is the team that we thought we had all year. We thought this team would outslug everybody else, right? We had some questions about the pitching, and we thought this team would come through. Well, to me, one of the biggest pieces of why this team has played well so recently, Jordan Walker.
Yeah, you mentioned that, that him as well as Mason Wynn, we're going to get to that the Cardinals won 3 games in a row. They beat the Pirates on Wednesday night. As we talk here on Thursday, they're going to go for the sweep of the 4-game series. Just unfortunately still 7 games out of the wild card race, 10 games now left in the regular season. But I think what happened in the 7th inning of Wednesday night's game was an example of what you're talking about and what we kind of thought maybe would be the case this season. But unfortunately, when you figure out why are the Cardinals hovering right around 500 all year, it's because we haven't seen that very much. Mason Wynn leads off the inning with a home run, ties the game. They end up scoring 6 runs in the inning. Jordan Walker, the big blow, a 3-run double to clear the bases to cap the 6-run inning. The Cardinals had 3 consecutive hits with the bases loaded, and they came into that game last night hitting 164 with the bases loaded this season. So I think you're exactly right that's what we hope to see, and I think it does. Maybe it kind of is you can look at it 2 different ways. You can look at it as, okay, well, where's this been all year? But I think the positive way to look at it is, what does this mean for next year?
And what I take away from last night are 2 things. One is Mason Wynn, right? Obviously that big home run. But I think what the key to Mason has been, they finally put him in the leadoff spot, which I'm going to pat my own self on the back for that because I've been screaming about that forever. They put him there. They left him alone. And what happened? He finally started to figure things out, and he's become one of the best hitters with 2 strikes, and it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to faze him. The other thing that they've started to figure out is when the home runs aren't working, you don't need a home run every time. Mm-hmm. The 3 hits they had with the bases loaded were singles and doubles. Mm-hmm. There wasn't really anything outside of that. And the other key to that inning is Jordan Walker. And Jordan Walker, his problem all year has been that slider changeup low and away. He's got that long, slow swing there that he couldn't figure out. Well, he swung through one last night, missed it. The pitcher came back through him, the exact same pitch again. He didn't swing. Very next pitch, the hardest hit ball hit by any Cardinal player this entire year at 115 off the bat, the big 3-run double.
And when you see him do things like that, you can kind of maybe live with some of the stuff that happens in the outfield, because he did not have a very good night in the outfield. But
he did not. And I think that's what they're going to say that he needs to work on and where his struggles are. But the other key to this thing that we talked about before, when Jordan Walker is here, he needs to play. He got called up on August 30th. The Cardinals have played 18 games since then. He started 17 of them.
And I know he leads the team in home runs and in RBIs in the month of September.
And over the last 7 games, he leads an average 333 over the last 7 games, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs. It goes to show that when you allow him the confidence to know that he's going to play and he can relax a little bit, he can do big things still.
Of course, one big statistic about both Mason Wynn and Jordan Walker that I think people tend to forget or tend to overlook, they're both 22 years old.
And I think that's the key that a lot of this team has overlooked is the fact that these guys are going to make mistakes because they're young, right? Same with Victor Scott. And I know a lot of people have questions about Victor Scott's first step defensively and this and that, but what is Michael Ciani bringing at the plate here this last week? Hasn't been much.
Sounds like we might have some possible candidates for Mike's 3 likes in the newsletter this week here.
There's a few.
But I also know there's some things that bother you a little bit too.
There are some things that bother me a little bit, and I think some of it lies in the starting pitching. And when you look at this next 2 weeks they have, you've really got to figure out what is our plan for next year going forward, right? Because right now, Miles Michaelis is the guy that you've got signed for a $16 million contract, and over his last 2 starts, he's only given you 7 innings and a 10.5 ERA.
And that's unfortunately continuing a trend of a lot of poor starts.
A lot of poor starts for him this entire year. And so you've really got to figure out what do you do with him and what do you do with his contract.
There's going to be a lot of time, not next week's show, the couple of shows after that, as we kind of get into the start of the off season, as far as kind of some of the things to kind of digest and to pick apart. And one of them, of course, will be the starting rotation and what the plans are for going forward, because you do have a lot of those guys under contract or have options on a couple of those guys. And we all think that this is going to be a pretty tight fiscal year for the Cardinals, because you don't know about the Valley Sports future money. You don't know about the attendance has dropped off a little bit, obviously. So that's some lost revenue as well. What's going to be the season ticket base for next year? So I think, anybody who projects the Cardinals to have a big rise in payroll for next year is probably going to be out of luck. But you got all those guys that are signed for a pretty hefty contract in that rotation. Can you move some of those guys and save some money that way?
And the other hope that we as Cardinal fans need to all be hoping and praying for is that some deal with Valley Sports, and whether it's Amazon or whoever, gets figured out early in the offseason. Because if that's locked up and there's a sure deal in the contracts and the money, then yes, the spending will change significantly, I think. But right now, I think not knowing the fact that they could go bankrupt and not get that next paycheck is going to leave them really wanting to crunch the numbers. And I wouldn't be shocked if this team tries to cut $50 million out of the payroll. That wouldn't surprise me.
And figure out where they're going to do that is going to be, of course, the biggest question. So 10 games left. Cardinals play the Pirates on Thursday night. Eric Fetty will get to start at Busch Stadium. They'll try to complete a sweep of that 4-game series. Cleveland comes to town for the final 3 home games this weekend. And I've got some ideas here too, but and then they go on the road to finish the season at Colorado and at San Francisco. What do you want to see from this team the next 10 days? I've got some ideas, but I want to hear yours.
Well, it's a combination of a couple things, right? Because like I've said before, this team's not completely out of it. They probably are when you look at the numbers mathematically, so it's probably going to be sooner rather than later.
What do you tell me the tragic number was 4?
Some combination of your magic number is 4 against Arizona and the New York Mets. And so some combination of 4 wins or 4 losses between the Cardinals and both of those teams, or either or, will eliminate the Cardinals. And I think the question mark you got to figure out is who is on this team next year and who are the guys you play, right? Because you got a lot of young guys for a lot of spots that don't make a whole lot of sense, right? Like Thomas Sagisi, where does he fit into this? You've also got Nolan Gorman, who isn't here, but where does he slide into that? Is it Michael Ciani or is it Victor Scott? And that hasn't even touched the rotation yet. Yeah. And you got a lot of young guys there that have done very well and also done very well up here.
The other guy that we did see on Wednesday night that I think falls into that category, where does he fit going forward, is Michael McGreevy.
And again, it goes back to I really agree, and I think you agree, that the Cardinals have really handled how they brought up some of these young players this year very poorly. And this kid has done nothing but pitch very well since he's been here. And his first start that he had a while back was great. And so I think that's one of the more baffling things of this season is why did they wait so long to bring him up and give him an opportunity when he's looked so well? And
part of it probably is because we mentioned all the guys that they've got under contract. I mean, you've got, basically once you picked up Fetty, you've got Gray, Fetty, Michaelis, Matz are all under contract for next year. Gibson and Lynn have options for next year. I don't know how many openings are going to be in the starting rotation.
Well, I think anyone that's watched this game and over the last month has watched Miles Michaelis pitch should know that they don't need to see him pitch again. It's not there. I'm sorry to say it, but as we've said, guys get old quick, and I think we've reached the end of Miles Michaelis, and it's just not working. And I don't know that we have much to lose by not pitching him and pitching Michael McGreevy instead to see what they got.
I would like to see McGreevy get a start this last week. I'd like to see Gordon Graceffo come up and get another start. I thought a couple of times that he came up and pitched, he pitched well. And you even if, and that's the other thing I think you look at with some of these young players is, okay, maybe there's not a spot for him in the rotation. Maybe it's a spot in the bullpen for next year. Or maybe he's a guy that you can throw into a deal, to get some other players coming back from some other ball clubs. So I was really kind of surprised that the White Sox didn't ask for one of those two guys in the trade that they made to get Fedde. I kind of was really surprised that they didn't have to put a prospect in that deal. So I think you got to know what you have a little bit. And I agree with you. I mean, I think we know what we have in Kyle Gibson. We know Lance Lynn is not going to pitch again because he's back on the injured list because of that knee problem. But Matz, do you want to see a start from Matz? They have to kind of make some plans here.
And when you look at the way that both Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn pitched the second half of the season, they've shown you enough to show that I would much rather see them in this starting rotation next year than some of these other guys. And the other guy is Andre Palante because he's done what they've said he's supposed to do. So what do? Do you give him a shot all year as a starter, or do you try to think somebody else out there wants him as a starter and package him somewhere too?
Right. And maybe this is the opportunity to trade Palante when his value is as high as it's going to be. I mean, his value is not any higher than it could be right now.
It's as high as it's going to be.
But also you look at the fact if you're right and the Cardinals are really going to be kind of looking to cut the payroll, what's the first way you cut that payroll? It's by not picking up Gibson and Lynn's options. And you save a bunch of money right there. Although I think of those two guys, I think there's a better chance that Gibson comes back than Lynn. We're kind of doing some stuff I said we weren't going to do next week, but it's stuff to talk about. It's kind of fun to talk about because I think Gibson, even what he's given you on the field, I think he's also provided that gap that existed with Adam Wainwright not being here as far as the older veteran leader. I've seen him talking to Liberatore. I've seen him talking to a lot of the other young pitchers, watching video, watching analysis. So I think he's provided a valuable asset to this club beyond what how he's performed on the field.
And I'm probably going to jinx this when I say this, but I also think that Kyle Gibson is probably less injury prone than Lance Lynn. You without being rude, you kind of look at the two body types that you have, and Lynn is more likely to get injured than Kyle is. And so something like that goes a long way too with this ball club.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a couple more names that I want to talk about coming up the rest of this season. The one thing I'd like to see happen, and of course this is not based on his own performance, but it has to have help because they have to have the lead. Ryan Helsley's 5 saves away from getting the team record for saves. We've talked about what have been a valuable performer he's been for this team. I'd like to see him get to 50 saves and set the team record.
And he could have had a shot last night until Jordan Walker's big 3-run inning.
Hitting that ball.
And so, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you want to win every game you have, but it would be really cool to see him get that record. It'd be really cool to see him get to 50 too.
And I would like to see the Cardinals do something to honor Matt Carpenter this weekend. You talk about guys who may not be back next year. I mean, no decision has been made. Matt hasn't said anything about what his future is and if he wants to continue to play for a year. But I think you can look at the tea leaves and kind of predict that maybe he won't be back, and maybe he's going to retire, maybe not. But it'd be nice if they honored him and saluted him because he's a future Cardinal Hall of Famer.
It'd be very nice. And Matt Carpenter's done a lot of things for this club. A lot of people may have differing opinions on him based on how he's performed late in his season, but early in his career when he was here, he was a very impactful player and did a lot to support this organization. And you look at his numbers with the Cardinals, and he's been right there. And I think the other guy that you got to figure out what you're going to do with at the end of the season here is Paul Goldschmidt.
Definitely, yeah. So I don't think they will do anything to salute him this weekend because I think if I had to read the tea leaves, I would think that they right now think he'll be back.
But again, if the team really wants to cut payroll,
correct,
there's another option because you're not paying Luken Baker or Alec Burleson as much money as those guys.
No.
But is one of those two then on the flip side, is Alec Burleson or Luken Baker a trade bait option when their stock is probably as high as it's going to be?
True. I also want to mention 2 other things that I'd like to see this weekend. One of which is probably not going to happen, but I think it should happen. And you mentioned him earlier. I'd like to see Nolan Gorman back up here playing for this final week. Let him have some little more confidence going into the offseason. I mean, he's got to be – I haven't talked to him, but I got to think he's, really not happy with his personal situation right now. And I know he didn't have – I know he, hit some home runs. I know he didn't play as well as he wanted to, just like everybody else on the team. But you got to get – he's still part of this team's future, I think.
And I think that the interesting thing that this team's got to figure out is between Brendan Donovan, Thomas Agisi, and Nolan Gorman, who's the odd man out? Because you won't be able to have room for all of them probably. And so that's why I think these guys need to play the end of the season, and it's going to be a big question in spring training too.
And by that point, we'll know who's
Well,
here
we
and
may know,
who's
yeah.
not here. But the other thing I think the Cardinals do have something to shoot for this last 10 days, even if they're not going to be in the playoffs, and that's to finish above 500. This club has not had losing records 2 consecutive seasons, non-COVID years, non-strike years, since 1958, 1959. Now, I know that a lot of the current players probably don't put a lot of stock in historical records like that, but it is something the franchise points to. And I think to get to 82 wins would be an important step for this club, and I think that's a doable number.
If this team finishes above 500 but doesn't make the playoffs, are there still a lot of changes in the front office?
Yes. I don't think this club finishing below 500 or finishing 2 games above 500 would change those decisions. What we did have I mentioned, if you have a question, be sure to email us and let us know. We had a question a couple of weeks ago, but I forgot to answer it last week. One of our viewers had asked about the implications for some of these players for the 40-man roster going forward and who they have to protect this year. Well, one of those was Thomas Ajayci, who is now already up in the big league club, so he'll be on the 40-man roster. The other 2 guys, it's guys who were drafted in college in 2021 or high school or international signings in 2020. So for this year, who will be eligible for have to be on the 40-man roster or be eligible for the Rule 5 draft. So there's 2 primary prospects that have to be protected. One's Tink Hence, the Cardinals' top pitching prospect. The other's Takeo Roby. So I think both those guys obviously will be on the 40-man roster when those decisions come out in early December. But other than that, we'll see.
And some of that will kind of work itself out, right? Because like we talked about Matt Carpenter, so that'll open up a spot for one of them. Depending on Kyle Gibson or Lance Lynn or what we do there, we'll open a spot for the others. So,
and I actually think they have at least one open spot on the 40-man roster right now.
And they might right now, yeah. So some of that stuff will work itself out as we get to the end of the season. And for those that don't know, as we get toward the end of the season, we can talk through, when are the options that we have to sign guys by or offer contracts. So we'll talk on that as we get in future future shows.
Yeah, we're not going to get all the Cardinals questions answered that we have here and now in the next 10 days. We'll have plenty of time after the season's over. And I think because you have to decide, first of all, who's calling the shots. I mean, who's going to be in charge of the baseball operations department as they go through the evaluation process? Is it John Mozeliak for another year? Is it Chaim Bloom? Is it somebody we have on our radar? Who's going to take over the Cardinals farm system with Gary LaRock retires? There's a lot of things that have to be done.
And this may be rude to say, but the Cardinals score 6 runs after Ollie's out of the ball game and not calling the strings. So
Turner Warner left too.
And the question is, how much are those guys really impacting the game decisions or letting them just play, right?
I do want to give a shout out to our friends down in Palm Beach, the Palm Beach Cardinals, Class A Cardinals Farm Club. They pick up a win on Wednesday night, and that gives them the Florida State League Championship. So a shout out to J.J. Weatherholt and some of the other players who helped bring that championship together. A big year down in Palm Beach. And I think, we were down there a couple of weeks ago, wrote a long feature story on J.J., an in-depth profile that if you haven't checked it out, you can find it elsewhere on the website. I think he's a kid that the Cardinals have a really high expectations about as well. But it's always important, I think, at that level to have a team win. I mean, I always say that winning a winning record in the minor leagues doesn't mean anything, but I do think it's important. And you've also got it going on right now in Springfield, the Cardinals Double-A club. They're playing in the first round of the Texas League playoffs, game 2 on Thursday night down in Springfield. If they can win that game, then they will win that first round series and advance to the championship. So I think it's I think winning at the minor league level is important.
I think it's very important. I think it's very important, right? Because you want to train them to know that this team is accustomed to winning, and you want them to be like, they want to win a Double-A, they want to win a Triple-A, and when they get up here, then hey, that's all we've done is win, so we need to win up here too. And exciting to see Palm Beach come through, and JJ had a big triple last night to score a couple runs. So it's exciting to see the young kids that stay calm and composed and come through in those big situations, because you hope they can do it up here.
The one disappointment about the game on Wednesday night was that Chen Wei Lin, who's the pitcher from Taiwan, the Cardinals were really excited about his future. He started the game and pitched the first inning, and then they had about a 2.5-hour rain delay, so he didn't get to come back in the game. So they used a lot of the other different pitchers to finish it up. So that was the only disappointment, is you didn't get to see him go deeper into that ball game. So what else we get to here? A couple of things coming up. I'll bring this up too. A couple of things we're going to tease you about coming forward. Next week, you're going to hear more about this, so be sure to be paying attention to next week's podcast, because we're going to have a special thing coming up here with National Pizza Month coming up in October. So thanks to our friends at Dewey's Pizza, especially the Webster Groves location. A couple other things that we want to mention as well. I know we've talked about this before, but if you're already thinking about 2025, one of the things to bring up, of course, is our spring training bash, the baseball bash that we've done every year now for the last several years at the Homewood Suites in Palm Beach Gardens right there on Roger Dean Boulevard. It's going to be March 11th. We have that date set. You can find out all the information about not only the party, but also about the hotel special rate we get at that hotel. Great hotel, just about a mile from the ballpark with a free shuttle to and from the games. So a special rate. That rooms are limited though, but we have a spring training tab page on our website. You can get all the information there and be able to call and make your reservations for that special rate, because as we mentioned, it is a limited number of rooms available. So encourage everybody to check that out.
Always an exciting time, right? And all these young guys that we keep talking about, and JJ Weatherholt and Tink Hentz, and this is your time to go see them. So it's always an exciting time to watch those guys.
And we always try to get a couple of players to come over to that party. Obviously, way too early now to know who that would be. This year was Matthew Libator and Victor Scott II, and I know everybody who was at the party this year enjoyed their presentations. Also mentioned, of course, you've heard us talk frequently about our relationship with Rainbows for Kids, the charity that we run here as part of the STLSportsPage.com, have for a long time. We've got our annual fundraiser coming up in November. It'll be a trivia night, and you're obviously very involved in that as well. November 8th, you can get that information on our website, as well as just rainbowsforkids.org. So hopefully everybody will come out and support that as well. General trivia.
We'd love to have everybody there.
So I encourage you to check out both of those things. So as we mentioned, the Cardinals in town this weekend. They finished up the series against the Pirates on Thursday, and then the last three home games of the year against Cleveland, and then go out to Colorado and San Francisco to end the season. So hopefully they finish strong. I think that's what we all kind of hope for, even if they fall short of the playoffs, and then we can kind of gear up and see which ex-Cardinals we're going to cheer for in the playoffs, because there'll be a bunch of them scattered around different teams.
There will be, for sure. It'll be exciting, but always a great time to get out at the ballpark for the last weekend, last home series, and wish this team well as we finish up the season.
Thanks for the visit. Thanks for tuning in to our podcast here, Reigns on the Cardinals. That'll do it for this week's edition. Be sure and check us out next week. And anywhere you get your favorite podcast, you'll find us. And then sure check out our other Cardinal content here on STLSportsPage.com. For Mike Reigns, this is Rob Reigns reporting. Have a great day, everybody.